Chairman, for convening this very important hearing, and thank you to our extremely distinguished panel of witnesses for appearing today and for all the important work you've done over the years. I'd like to start with Dr. Putnam and your written testimony. On page 5, you write, "This cherished American dream is evaporating for over 25 million children born to low-income, less educated parents in the last 3 decades." A little bit later, you write, "Rich kids and poor kids are now growing up in separate and unequal Americas." That's the case across racial and ethnic lines, correct, Dr. Putnam?
Yes, sir.
And you tell a story that I've seen with different names on it that most of us have, very poignant, about Alyssa and Layla. Alyssa, a rich kid in Southern California whose parents can afford a fancy private school and swimming lessons to get her into a better college, and Layla, whose mother is out of work and who has to work at an entry-level job and go to a for-profit college hoping that she can get ahead. Those disparities that that you write about, I think we've all seen back home in our hometowns and states with depressing regularity. You go on page 6 to say further, "Rich kids enter kindergarten almost a full year ahead of bottom third kids, and rich kids increasingly attend schools with other rich kids and poor kids with other poor kids." You have what you call scissor graphs on page 7 and page 8, which also tell the tale of the amount of time that richer parents, better educated parents, are able to spend time with their children in developmental time in what you call enrichment experiences like swimming lessons or summer camps, time just spent together at family dinners and then extracurricular activities. I want to explore that further with the chart that we have here, and I'll orient the audience to that chart. This is real hourly wages by education. So over here, you start at 1973, it's normalized to 100, where everybody's basically the same. And then you see over time, coming out to just after 2003, so this doesn't include continued disparities, the growth in wages or decline based on education. And you see a very strong correlation. Those with the most advanced degrees have seen the highest wage growth, college degrees nearly as high. But then here, some college but not a degree, barely any growth at all, high school graduation, a decline, less than high school education, a collapse in wages. Does this reflect what you write about in your written testimony, Dr. Putnam? Is this one of the driving causes of the decline in social capital and social trust among more stressed families and stressed communities?
Yes, sir. It's not the only cause, but it's an important background factor. Okay. And then, if I can add...
Yes, please.
What the work that I summarized in my testimony that I wrote about in Our Kids suggests is the translation of that graph into the scissors graphs in individual families means that increasingly family status is inherited, is passed from generation, increasingly. And that makes it even worse.
And is that because, in part, divisions along educational and class-based lines become more self-reinforcing and perpetuating than older ethnic or racial divisions did in the mid-20th century?
Yes, sir.
You write a little bit further in testimony on page 10 about areas of interest that were left aside. "Successful economic and job development policies in communities are likely to have important positive facts on the local opportunity gap, but assessing such strategies was outside the scope of our expertise." So the point there would be finding some way for people who have less than a college degree to once again partake in the American dream that increasingly is out of touch for them.
Yes, sir. Can I add just 2 quick qualifications? One is I used quickly rich and poor, but I was not comparing Bill Gates' kids to homeless kids. I was comparing kids coming from the upper third of American society, that is, kids coming from college-educated homes. My grandchildren are, in that sense, rich kids, although they're not rich. And I wasn't comparing them to the poorest of the poor. I'm comparing them to what we used to call the working class, that is, people who didn't get past high school. So I don't want to, I know you understand this, but I don't want the quick terms rich and poor to get misunderstood. We're talking about a basic...
I come from Dardanelle, Arkansas, where $18,000 makes you a millionaire.
Yeah.
So.
Secondly, the section, the passage of my testimony that you, a written testimony that you referred to, came from a report that I chaired that was produced by 50 experts from across disciplines and across party lines and so on, that tried to figure out how can we begin to narrow the opportunity gap. And I have no doubt that local economic development strategies of the sort that you all explored in your previous hearing a month ago are important. I also think, however, and we didn't talk about those here, but we did talk about a lot of ways in which individual kids coming from disadvantaged backgrounds could be helped to get back onto what we call on-ramps, things like apprenticeship programs and community college reforms and so on that would enable poor kids coming from the bottom part of that graph themselves to move up the ladder. That blockage, increasing blockage of circulation upward is, I think, a really grave problem for America.
Thank you very much for the answers and the testimony, Dr. Putnam, and I apologize to other witnesses. My time expired, but I do want to, chart please, just conclude by saying, to me, one of the most important policy challenges we face as a Congress is to help find a way to increase the wages of people in our country who don't have college degrees or don't have advanced degrees. I would submit one of the easiest policy levers that we have is our immigration policy, to reorient our immigration policy towards supporting higher skilled workers as opposed to the current policy, which is heavily skewed towards unskilled or lower skilled workers, which directly competes with the workers in this area here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Byer.